I want to begin with a powerful reframe, one that's going to fundamentally shift how you think about your brain. Because we've been taught to misunderstand it. We've been trained culturally, socially, sometimes even neurologically, to believe that the brain is here to keep us safe, to avoid danger, to run from discomfort. But here's the truth backed by neuroscience, biology, and thousands of hours of behavioral observation. The brain is not a fortress designed to keep out pain. The brain is a forge. It's built to endure the heat of life and grow because of it. That means your brain isn't designed to protect you from the hard things. It's designed to make you capable of facing the hard things and becoming something more as a result. That's what mental strength actually is. It's not some abstract concept. It's not a motivational poster. It's a physical, structural process happening right now in the circuits of your prefrontal cortex, your limbic system, your basal ganglia. You can train it, you can measure it, you can build it, but here's the catch: most people never will. And do you know why? Because most people have fallen into the illusion of comfort. They believe the goal of the mind is to feel safe, to feel good, to feel at ease. They chase dopamine spikes through distraction, entertainment, avoidance, and it feels like safety. But it's not. It's sedation, it's decay. Your brain does not grow from rest, it grows from load. Neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to change itself structurally and functionally, is experience dependent. Let me repeat that. Your brain changes in response to what you do. It does not change through wishing. It does not change through scrolling. It does not change through staying where you've always been. If you want mental strength, you need to expose your brain to challenge and let it rewire in response. This is why elite performers across every domain, whether it's the military, athletics, medicine, science, or entrepreneurship, all put themselves in environments of friction. They don't seek ease, they seek tension. They use challenge as stimulus. And here's what's even more fascinating from a neurobiological perspective. When the brain faces adversity, it activates adaptive pathways. It creates new synaptic connections. It upregulates the production of neurotransmitters like norepinephrine and dopamine, not for pleasure, but for performance. That means the stress you feel in the face of challenge is not a threat, it's a trigger. It's your brain's signal that it's time to grow. And if you respond to that signal by leaning in, not backing off, you engage what's called the anterior cingulate cortex, the brain's conflict monitoring center. It becomes more active when you face errors and stress, and it gets stronger each time you do. That's how resilience is built. But let's be very clear here. This is not about pushing through blindly. It's about understanding the mechanisms. If you think you can become mentally strong just by suffering more, you've missed the point. It's not pain that builds strength. It's the interpretation of pain, the use of pain. That's what leads us into the second principle. Mentally strong brains do not avoid pain, they decode it. Pain, emotional, mental, physical, is information. And just like physical pain alerts us to injury, mental pain alerts us to imbalance. It says, pay attention, something is misaligned, something matters here. A mentally strong brain doesn't run from that. It studies it. I've spent years in laboratories observing the neural correlates of stress and fear. We've watched the amygdala light up in response to uncertainty. We've tracked cortisol levels, mapped blood flow, studied the electrochemical patterns of people under pressure. And what we've seen is this. When individuals lean into their discomfort and ask deeper questions, their brain's emotional circuitry starts to reorganize. In simple terms, when you stop avoiding what hurts and start exploring it, your brain stops reacting and starts rewiring. That's the essence of emotional intelligence, and emotional intelligence is not just some social skill. It's a survival tool. Because when you understand the language of your own mind, you stop being a victim of it. Think of it like this. Let's say you're anxious. Your heart is racing. Your thoughts are spinning. Your brain's default reaction is, get me out of this feeling. But a mentally strong brain says, hold on. What's the source of this? Is this fear rational or conditioned? Is this a signal about risk? Or just a residue from the past? When you ask those questions, you activate your dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. That's the part of the brain responsible for cognitive control executive function. It inhibits emotional reactivity from the limbic system. In other words, you take back control. You move from reflex to response, from reactivity to responsibility, and that word responsibility is so critical because it means the ability to respond and not react. Respond, that's the goal of a mentally strong brain, not to feel nothing, but to respond intentionally to everything. When you understand that, everything changes. You stop fearing stress. You start using it. Here's a practical example. One of the strongest training protocols for mental resilience is something called deliberate discomfort. You expose the body and brain to low-level stress in a controlled way. Cold exposure, breath hold, high-intensity intervals, and you train your nervous system to stay calm under pressure. Why does that matter? Because your brain is plastic. Every time you override panic with stress or fear with focus, you're carving new pathways. And those pathways become automatic over time. This is also why journaling is so effective. Not because it's some deep, self-carrier, but because it forces the brain to label emotions. And labeling activates the prefrontal cortex while decreasing amygdala activation. That means just by writing down what you feel, you're shifting from chaos to clarity. You're decoding pain. You're training your brain to interpret instead of implode. The strongest people I've worked with are not fearless. They are fluent in their fear. They know its vocabulary. They know when it's lying. They know when to challenge it and when to listen. And that's the difference between someone who breaks down under pressure and someone who breaks through it. Let's talk about trauma for a moment, because this is where a lot of people get stuck. Trauma, psychological trauma, literally reorganizes the brain. It increases activity in the amygdala, decreases activity in the hippocampus, and suppresses the prefrontal cortex. That's why people with unprocessed trauma often struggle with memory, impulse control, and emotional regulation. But here's the hope. The brain can recover. Through exposure, therapy, mindfulness, and structured routines, we can rewire those circuits. It's not theory, it's measurable neuroscience. So when I say mentally strong brains decode pain, I'm not romanticizing suffering. I'm scientifically validating growth, because the more fluent you become in your own discomfort, the less power it has over you. And that's freedom, not the absence of pain, but the presence of understanding. You want mental strength. Get curious about what hurts, explore the edge of your fear, study your patterns. Ask, what is this teaching me? What's the story behind this response? Where did I learn it? And is it still serving me? Because every thought, every feeling, every behavior is built on a neural circuit. If it can be built, it can be rebuilt. That is the gift of neuroplasticity. That is the invitation your brain is constantly offering you. Let me pause here and be extremely direct. If you are living your life trying to avoid stress, you are training your brain to be fragile. Every time you run from challenge, every time you choose the easy way, you reinforce a circuit of avoidance. And avoidance is not neutral, it's a habit, it becomes reflexive, and reflexive avoidance is the fastest path to a weak, reactive, disempowered mind. But if you choose the harder path, if you train your brain to seek challenge, to examine fear, to sit with discomfort, you build a different system. You build a system that responds to life instead of recoiling from it. You become the kind of person who does not wait for confidence, but acts from conviction. That's what a mentally strong brain really is. It's not about being tough. It's about being trained. It's not about being fearless. It's about being focused. And most of all, it's not something you're born with. It's something you build through consistent exposure to challenge, through disciplined decoding of discomfort, and through the deliberate design of your neural environment. So I'll say this one more time, clearly and without apology. Your brain is not a fortress, it's a forge. And if you want mental strength, you cannot avoid the fire. You have to enter it. You have to stay in it. And you have to let it shape you into something stronger than what you were before. One of the most misunderstood aspects of mental strength, one that's overlooked, dismissed, or grossly underestimated, is the power of focus. And when I say focus, I'm not talking about the ability to stare at something for a few seconds or the capacity to pay attention when things are quiet. I'm talking about sustained, deliberate, neurologically disciplined attention control, the ability to decide moment by moment what matters and what doesn't, and then build your life around that decision. That, more than any other cognitive skill, is what determines your mental strength. Now, I want to be very precise here. Focus is not just a preference, it's a neurochemical event. It's built on the orchestration of several key players: dopamine, acetylcholine, norepinephrine. These neurotransmitters work in concert to direct your cognitive and behavioral output toward a single goal, while suppressing all other competing signals. And when that system is strong, you operate with clarity, you execute with intensity, you learn faster, you retain more, you push longer. But when it's weak, when it's fractured or hijacked, you become reactive, fragmented, overstimulated, and ultimately ineffective. Your brain is a limited resource, and your attention is the currency it spends. Every time you check your phone for no reason, scroll aimlessly, open a tab just to click another one, you're not just losing seconds, you're bleeding cognitive energy. That microfragmentation of attention creates a neurological tax that your prefrontal cortex, your center for focus, decision making, and impulse control, has to pay for. And that tax adds up. It drains the very system you need to be resilient. Now, people ask me all the time, how do I become more mentally strong? And the first thing I ask them is, how often are you letting your environment control your focus? Because if you don't control your environment will control you. And most environments today, especially digital ones, are designed to hijack your attention. They are engineered to fragment your focus and addict your circuitry to novelty and reward. The reason this matters deeply biologically is because attention shapes the brain, literally. Neuroplasticity is gated by attention. You can only rewire what you focus on, so if your attention is scattered, your growth will be scattered. If your attention is distracted, your habits will be distracted, and if your attention is reactive, your identity will be reactive. So you have to take ownership of your focus like it's the most precious resource you own, because it is. The people who change the world, scientists, artists, warriors, leaders, they all have one thing in common. They command their focus. They structure their lives around it. They design rituals, habits, boundaries, and environments that protect it. Not because they are obsessed with discipline, but because they understand how fragile attention really is. Let me give you a practical example. When I go into deep work, writing, researching, designing protocols, I enter what's called a limbic friction phase. That's the psychological resistance you feel before deep engagement, and your brain wants to escape it. It wants to check messages, change tasks, look for novelty, but here's the trick. If you override that impulse for 90 seconds, just 90 seconds, you begin to trigger the anterior mid-cingulate cortex. That part of your brain helps stabilize attention. It increases persistence. It downregulates the need for dopamine from external cues and shifts it internally toward the goal itself. This is what builds the ability to enter flow states, and flow is not magic, it's mechanics. It's the result of consistent focus, challenge, and feedback. And it starts with one decision: I will not leave this moment just because it's uncomfortable. That decision rewires your brain's stress response. It converts distraction into discipline. You want to build a mentally strong brain, then start treating your focus like a muscle. Give it load, give it recovery, give it intention, because every time you get distracted and then return to the task, you're not failing, your training. And the more you train, the more automatic that return becomes. That's what resilience looks like at the cognitive level. And that brings us to something even deeper, because mental strength isn't just about attention. It's about what happens beneath attention. It's about emotion. You can be the most focused person in the world, but if your emotions own you, if they hijack your judgment, your habits, your confidence, then your strength will crumble the moment you're triggered. That's why emotionally intelligent brains are mentally invincible. Let's strip away the myth here. Emotional intelligence is not softness. It's not sentimentality. It's not about being warm and fuzzy. It's about being able to identify, interpret, and regulate your internal states under pressure. It's about emotional granularity, knowing the difference between stress and fear, between sadness and shame, between anger and disappointment, and being able to respond to each with precision. Your limbic system is fast, it's reactive, it evolved to detect threat in milliseconds, it doesn't think. It fires, and that's useful when you're facing a predator, but it's dangerous when you're facing criticism, uncertainty, or your own inner narratives. What you need is a strong prefrontal cortex, a part of the brain that can modulate those impulses, question those thoughts, delay those reactions. We've seen in functional MRI scans that people who train emotional awareness through mindfulness, journaling, therapy actually increase the connectivity between the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex. That means their emotional reactions are still there, but they have more space between the trigger and the response. And in that space is where strength lies. Let me make this very practical. Let's say you're in a high-stakes situation. You're about to give a presentation, compete, negotiate, lead. You feel your heart rate rise, your thoughts speed up, your breath shorten. A mentally weak brain says, I'm anxious, I'm not ready, this is bad. But a mentally strong, emotionally intelligent brain says, this is arousal, my system is mobilizing, this is energy I can use. That one reinterpretation shifts the entire neurochemical profile of your experience. It increases dopamine. It changes performance and it builds confidence. Reappraisal is a skill and it can be trained. You can learn to reframe stress as challenge. You can learn to interpret failure as feedback. You can learn to sit with anger without becoming it. That's not avoidance, that's mastery. I want to be honest, there's no hack for this. There's no shortcut to emotional intelligence. It requires observation, it requires reflection, it requires practice, but the reward is immense. Because once you understand your emotional circuitry, you're no longer controlled by it. You become the architect of your reactions, and that gives you power over situations that used to control you. Think about the people you admire most, the ones who stay calm under pressure, who speak with clarity in chaos, who lead not with fear, but with conviction. They aren't lucky, they're trained, they've learned how to feel everything and still choose their response. That is not only emotional strength, it is neural sophistication. Your brain is constantly mapping your experiences. If you respond to fear with panic, it learns to panic faster. If you respond to fear with breath, presence, reflection, it learns to stabilize. That's not philosophy, that's neurobiology. There's one more piece here I want to drive home. Emotional intelligence also means being honest about your internal work. Because if you're suppressing your emotions, you're not being strong, you're being silent, and silence creates chaos. The brain needs expression, it needs outlets. If you don't talk it out, write it out, move it out, it will find a way to come out sideways. So yes, strength means restraint, but it also means expression. It means acknowledging what you feel, understanding what it means, and deciding what to do with it. That's what separates someone who is constantly overwhelmed from someone who is internally anchored. And that anchor is built through consistent practice. If you want to develop this, start simple. Name your emotions out loud or on paper. Track when they show up. Look for the patterns, and when you catch yourself reacting impulsively, pause and ask, what am I really feeling? What am I really needing? That one question can create a cascade of regulation in your nervous system. And remember this, mental strength is not the absence of emotion. It is the integration of emotion. The strongest mind is not the one that never feels, it's the one that feels fully and still acts with purpose. That kind of strength is rare, but it's possible, and it's trainable, and it starts with understanding that your emotions are not interruptions, they are indicators. They're not enemies, they are allies if you know how to read them. Emotionally intelligent brains are not only mentally invincible, they are neurologically optimized. They waste less energy on reactivity, they recover faster, they connect deeper, and they perform better because they are in sync. That's not magic, that's the natural outcome of intentional training, and the beautiful part, it's available to every single person. Because your brain is not fixed, it is adaptable, and the work you do today, on your focus, on your emotions, on your awareness, becomes the wiring you carry into every tomorrow. That's how strength is built, that's how minds are forged.